You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
My name is Peter Basserman, and I'd like to bring the November 12th meeting of the Inland Wetland and Watercourse Agency to order. This meeting is conducted in accordance with Executive Order 7B, and all speakers will be required to identify themselves with name and title each time they speak. Materials regarding the agenda items are also available on the Inland Wetland and Watercourse website. If you're looking to speak, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. Let's see, anything other administrative? No, I'm good. Jamie and Abby, if you can monitor the Zoom meeting so that if somebody wants to speak and I haven't recognized that, let me know. Let's take a roll call regarding the commissioners. Let's see. Commissioner Begeman? Not present. Commissioner Boda?
Commissioner Begeman is present.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Sorry,
for joining
mask
us.
on.
Commissioner Boda?
Boda present.
Commissioner Gonalsh? Commissioner Kraus?
Present.
Commissioner Rose? Commissioner Sullivan?
Present.
Thank you. We have a full agenda. Before we get into the minutes, just a question. Regarding the minutes, can we, when we issue the minutes, put the print date on the minutes? Because as we have continued to get revisions, it's, I think, important to know which section of minutes we're looking at when we discuss it. I think I received one yesterday, which I'm assuming is the latest. How would I know that?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. So these are actually the 4 minutes from the 4 different October meetings. So they're all unique.
Okay, no, I mean the agenda.
Oh, the agenda. Yes, we could make that a practice moving forward.
Okay. Wonderful.
The latest agenda is revised, and it has 3 applications for receipt and 5 applications for review.
Okay. So we have 4 minutes to be approved. First one up is October 8th, 2020, the regular meeting minutes.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. I also just want to point out that I believe Commissioner Granalch has joined the meeting.
Wonderful. Welcome, Richard. Let me go back 1 minute. Are there any changes to the agenda at this point, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. 2 of the applications for review were approved administratively based on previous discussion with the commission. I had been waiting for additional materials which were received. So items D and E under applications for review, I would recommend be moved to agent approval section. And then I also would recommend adding the SIPWIG virtual conference to the announcements portion of the agenda.
I have no issue with that. Does any commissioner have a problem with moving those items that were identified, items D and E under applications for review, to the other section? Okay, hearing none, that change should take place.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. If a commissioner can make a motion to make the changes as recommended by staff, I think that'd be appropriate.
This is Commissioner Boda. I will make I'll make a motion to make the changes recommended by staff to the agenda.
Commissioner Sullivan, I second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nobody opposed, okay. First up, October 8th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. It was in the Dropbox and I think also in the email that Abby sent out. I had one comment, I think, on item 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 bullet down. It says confirmation that the owner is aware that a variance would be required and of few modifications to plan. I think the of should be an A. Am I correct on that, or did I not understand the bullet?
Inland Wetland Associate Abby York. That sounds, I don't have them in front of me, but that sounds like that would be a correct change. Yes.
Okay, that's all I had for those minutes. Looking for a motion?
Commissioner Grenolch, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the October 8th meeting.
Is there a second?
Oh, this is Commissioner Boda. I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Do we need to go in an individual roll call vote on these minutes, Jamie, or can we just get a consensus vote?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, a roll call vote. And also, just to point out, you had recommended a modification. The motion does not address that. So if you would like to make the modification, that should be addressed as a modification to the motion.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion, Commissioner Basserman, that
There's a motion already on the table, though, so it should either be a modification of the motion on the table.
Commissioner Grenolch, I'll modify my motion to include the changes.
I accept the modifications. This is Commissioner Boda.
at this point, any further discussion? So roll call vote. Commissioner Begeman, do you accept the motion?
Aye.
Commissioner Boda?
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Grenache?
Aye.
Commissioner Kraus?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
All right, next up is the motion carries. Next up is the October 15th, 2020 special meeting site walk minute.
This is Commissioner Boda. Before we jump into those, I just, a logistical question. I am not seeing, I've got other drop boxes, but I don't have access to the Dropbox for this meeting in a particular link, only the last meeting. I don't know if you can tell me the date, but I don't see it here at all.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. If you open the agenda and click the link on the agenda, it will bring you to the Dropbox with all of the meeting materials. And I can copy that into the chat.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Wasn't there also an email sent out on these?
That's what I'm looking for, but I don't. I'm looking at the agenda. Oh, it just says, okay, I see it. It's here. It says here.
Yeah.
That takes you to a Dropbox where you have to sign in. You have to log in and stuff.
No, it's okay. I'm already logged in. I didn't see it for this particular meeting. Thank you.
We are looking at the October 15th special meeting site walk minute. like to entertain a motion if there is one.
This is Commissioner Kraus. I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes for the site walk that covered the 3 sites that we visited.
And a second?
Commissioner Sullivan, I second it.
Any further discussion? Another roll call vote. To accept the minutes of October 15th, Commissioner Begeman,
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Boda,
Commissioner Boda, abstain.
Commissioner Grenache,
Aye.
Commissioner Kraus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. We now have the minutes from. We now have the minutes for October 22nd, special meeting minutes.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I believe that there was a typo in that Commissioner Cross was listed as present and absent, and in fact was absent. So it's recommended that that correction be made.
Is there a motion to approve?
Commissioner Grenache, I'll make a motion that we approve the special meeting minutes of October 22nd
With the amendment from staff?
with amendment from staff.
Looking for a second.
Commissioner Boda, I'll second it. Discussion,
Any? Okay, for approval of the October 22nd, Commissioner Bassman, for approval of the October 22nd minutes, Commissioner Begeman,
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Boda,
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Grenache,
Commissioner Grenache, aye.
Commissioner Kraus,
Abstain.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Last up for minute approval, October 29th, another special meeting minutes, let's see, yep. Special meeting minutes,
Commissioner Sullivan, to accept the minutes for October 29th special meeting.
Commissioner Boda, I'll second.
any discussion? All right, for approval of the October 29th, 2020 special meeting minutes, roll call vote, Commissioner Begeman,
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Boda,
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Grenache,
I abstain.
Commissioner Kraus,
Abstain.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Commissioner Sullivan, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Okay. So we have next up the application for receipt, Inland Wetland 201101 46 Parish Farm Road, construction of a detached garage and associated grading with the relocation of the existing shed. This is again for receipt. Material, I believe, was available in the Dropbox for this. Staff, any additional comments before we turn this over to the applicant?
Jamie Frederick, and the Wetland Agent. I believe that we sent out the materials for this last week. And I can screen share the site plan, and the applicant is present to give a brief overview of what they're looking to do. I will point out that on the site plan, it looks like the wetland delineation was added based off of the soil scientist sketch rather than actually picked up in the field. It also was noted, though, that the wetland is predominantly located off-site. Wetland line is located to the west of the property, with it cutting across the little extended finger on the southwestern portion of the site.
Okay. With that on the screen in front of us, you would turn that over to the applicant. Who is here representing the applicant this evening?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I believe that Mark Reed is on the call. Mark, you might be muted.
Muted?
There you go.
are. Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark Reed, Robin Reed, owner of Parish Farm Road.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Maybe you give us a brief overview of what you're trying to do here.
Well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to, the overview is we're proposing to build a garage, which is a 30 by 30 garage with a 8-foot overhang shed. And presently there is a tool shed located in the vicinity of where the proposed garage is going to be. So we'd like to relocate that shed to the lower southwest part of the property so that we can build the garage. The reason for the proposed garage is the home right now is a walkout ranch it's a ranch with a walkout basement. And further on down the line, we are proposing to put an accessory apartment for my aging mother, who is 86 and been diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's. So in order to do this, we'd have to change and remodel the basement, which would take out all of the storage area within that basement. And so we're going to need the garage and the storage area above to house not only her storage, but our storage when we move into the house to take care of her, so that we don't want to put her in any type of facility at this point with COVID or any other point in the future. So this is why we're proposing the garage and the relocation of the shed.
This is Commissioner Basserman. The shed is on grade or on block? What is the shed like today?
This is Mark, the homeowner. The shed sits on, as it presently is located, sits on crushed stone. When it is relocated, it will sit on also a leveled crushed stone.
Thank you. Is Commissioner Basserman, what are the, I guess, dark lines that I'm seeing to the rear of the proposed garage? What do they represent?
This is Mark, homeowner. It seems that when the surveyor put those lines in, it is to show the distance from the southwest part of the slab area of the garage to the property line.
The two long lines that connect the garage back to the back of the property, are those the two lines you're referring to, or the curved lines?
No, the straight lines.
Yeah.
The straight lines.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. The two straight lines are calling out the distance from the rear property line. The two that are closer to the garage are the proposed grading, and then the one that is further back is the proposed silt fence location. And then further back, the wetland line is also a thick, dark line. And that's located beyond the chain link fence that marks the property boundaries. I also have some photos of the property available if the commission would like to review that. That would show the area where the garage is proposed and where the shed is proposed. I believe the applicant currently has an application into the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding the garage location relative to the side property line. And I know that they also need to go to planning and zoning for approval as well. They have expressed interest in agent review of this application. However, I also believe that it won't really hold them up if the commission wants to retain this application and review it and make a determination at the next meeting.
This is Commissioner Bassman, but this is, we call it available for receipt, which would suggest that we're not able to act tonight, correct?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, that is correct. The commission cannot act on it. If the commission were to determine that this was a minor project that was okay for administrative approval, then I could act on it as the agent. However, it would be the December meeting when this would be actionable for the commission.
Thank you.
So this is Commissioner Boda. I'm seeing wetland flag 5 and 9. Is that it? Or are there more that I'm not seeing? It's very tiny. I'm using Hanlon's.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I can see where it says wetland flag 1, wetland flag 5, and wetland flag 9. If you want, I can pull up the wetland delineation, which would have the soil scientist.
Oh, I see one. So, and I guess this is a question for the Reeds. The proposed relocation of the existing shed to the closest point with the wetland. For me, that raises probably the biggest concern. What is the proposed grading to? It's not numbered, is it? Can't see. Oh, is it numbered? 124, 126, 124? From 124. So the grading is it's very, the slope is very minimal. And what is from the silt fence to the property line and then to the wetland is what, 42 feet-ish?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. The garage distance from the wetland? So
no, I guess the limit of disturbance, because we have the proposed silt fence, and it looks like it's just about 40 feet to the property line, and then I'm estimating that's what, another 1.5, 2 feet beyond. That's the wetland.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. The 40 feet is from the rear property line to the back of the garage. So I think it's closer to 20 to 25 feet.
Yeah. But this is relatively flat, no?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. It is. Let me show you some pictures.
And this is currently, is the back currently grassed area, or is it treed?
Yes.
It's
Jamie
grass.
In the wetland.
So it would be a proposed garage with some minor grading on a relatively flat piece of property.
With the relocation.
Yes. So then and then the existing shed moving to that corner, is that what is the shed on? Is it on cinder blocks, or are you going to put some kind of, you're going to pour concrete? What are you going to?
This is Mark Reed, the homeowner. When the shed is relocated to that area, the shed, the grade there is minimal. So what we're proposing is just to put in 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch crushed stone and sit the shed on top of the crushed stone. It doesn't need cinder block or concrete of that nature. We want to have whatever water or rainfall is there to be able to go right through the crushed stone. I don't want to put any concrete on there. And the shed, primarily, the reason for the shed is that we are going to use it to house gardening tools, and we're organic gardeners, and we have a lot of fencing that we use to grow different vegetables on, and we spend a lot of time outside, so we have a lot of yard furniture that we're going to put in that shed. There's not going to be any lawnmowers or anything of that nature in that shed. All that would be in the garage itself. So there would be no accidental contamination that close to the wetlands whatsoever.
Commissioner Bassman, am I seeing stakes in that photo on the left side?
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent, the stakes to mark the location of the proposed relocation of the shed. And if you look to the right of the furthest right post, you can see a blue and pink flag in the woods. That's the closest wetland flag to the proposed activity.
This is Commissioner Kraus. I have a question, if I could ask it.
Please do.
Since the first map that we looked at shows a garage, but it's really not a garage. It's really an accessory apartment. So I assume there'll be plumbing, and I see on the map that you have a septic tank. Is that garage apartment going to be hooked up to the septic tank so that there'll be no water from that living space draining down towards these wetlands?
This is Mark Reed, the homeowner. The accessory apartment is going to be located in the existing home. It's not going to be located in the new proposed garage. The new proposed garage is it's a 2-bay garage with storage up above. There's no plumbing or anything of that nature in the new proposed garage at all.
Okay, so you're replacing your existing garage with the apartment. Do I understand that right?
This is Mark Reed, homeowner. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. My misunderstanding.
You're welcome.
This is Commissioner Boda. I think if you could move that shed a little further away from the wetland, or even turn it so that the northern corner of it is not so close to that wetland flag, and you can turn it 180 degrees and have it run kind of parallel with your southern property boundary. That will just move it a little bit away from the wetland.
This is Mark Reed, the homeowner. As it states on the survey right now, it's 5 feet. But what it was when Jamie came to the property, I actually staked it out at 7 feet away from that property because I thought that 5 feet was in fact too close. If you'd like us to turn the shed around so that that request is made, I don't have a problem with that at all.
I think the idea is just, you've got that sort of northern corner right really close to wetland flag 5. And I don't know that given that space, I don't know if you're gardening in that space or whatnot, but if you moved that and then the rest of this is relatively flat, I wouldn't object to this being done by the agent. I just that's exceptionally close to the wetlands, and that is not typically within our standard practice to do something so close that's not really absolutely necessary when you have room that you can move it.
Robin Reed, homeowner. Yes, we've considered turning it at an angle back there, which would be at least 7 feet from any corner of the shed to the wetlands. I actually prefer it like kind of kitty corner.
Mm-hmm.
And the location of the shed in addition to being at the back corner of the property, it kind of is blocking off that little finger of the property that does go into the wetlands. Since, we don't intend to do anything back there, it just kind of shuts that area off. But turning it sort of kitty corner, like on the diagonal there, gives us at least the 7 feet that you're referring to.
This is Commissioner Basserman. I have a question. I guess in the soils report conducted by Soil Resource Consultants dated October 20th, he talked about, slowly permeable conditions. Have you noticed in that area pooling of water when there is an intense rainstorm?
Mark Reed, homeowner. What area are we addressing at where the report says?
It's on page 2, non-wetland soils. You identify it by soil type.
Are you referring to the area where the shed is being proposed?
Since he didn't identify location, he was identifying soils. That's why I asked the question whether you noted in that particular area where the shed is going, whether there is any pooling of water.
Oh, no. This is Mark Reed, homeowner. No, there is no pooling of water in that particular area whatsoever.
The water there drains down to the back of that finger of the property. It drains back to that Cosgrove area.
Commissioner Grenolch, when you look at the map that is the last page of the Soil Resource Consultants report, you can see where the LP and the UD is, and they're both reasonably well-drained soils. So one's a Ludlow, and those soils are well-drained, not a wetlands type soil at all. And you can see see the number 17 and to the left of it. I think that's where he's got it designated on that.
Commissioner Basserman, yes, I see that, Commissioner Goodall. The LP area was the one where he actually noted, the slowly permeable condition. But if there's no pooling of water, as long as the shed and what it does doesn't interfere with the existing hydrology, I think I'm okay.
Commissioner Grenolch, I would have no problem allowing our agent, Jamie, to handle this administratively.
Can we make that a motion?
I'll make a motion if you need one.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I think general consensus is fine.
Okay. So you've got my okay.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Is there any commissioner that feels that this should not be done administratively? Hearing none, Jamie, you can approve this via agent approval.
Okay. Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I will reach out to the applicant with any additional questions and to update them on the process.
Thank you, and thank you, applicant, for the discussion this evening.
Yes, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Next up, Inland Wetland 2011-02, 30 Lamatra Lane, Lot 8, construction of a new single-family home. Is there something we can put on the screen, Mr. Basserman? Is there something you can put on the screen, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I am pulling up the site plan and also the subdivision plan to point out where the lot is. And we'll share that momentarily. And I believe that Michael is on the call to respond to any questions. This application came in on Tuesday. Town hall was closed on Wednesday, so I've not had a lot of time to look at the application materials. What you're looking at currently is the subdivision plan, and the lot in question is lot 8, which is located on the northwestern side of the development, adjacent to the existing Gould Lane. So flipping over to the site plan, it's by and large consistent with the subdivision approval. There's some minor modifications to the grading, but the drainage patterns remain predominantly the same. The spillway that was created a while back I want to say around 2013, if not soon earlier, is off the back of this property, and I believe there's no intention to modify it or go that far back. The limits of clearing are consistent with the subdivision approval. I do have a couple of questions about the silt fence, but I believe that could be handled administratively if the commission was comfortable with this application being processed as such. The entire site is outside of the 100-foot upland review area. But it was specified on the original subdivision approval as a lot that needed to come back for an inland wetland permit.
Commissioner Basserman, where is the nearest storm drain, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. There's a catch basin located just northeast or northwest, northeast of the property. And I believe that this is, a sediment chamber that processes the water coming into that catch basin from upstream, but it wouldn't process water going into that catch basin.
Okay. Could you go back to the subdivision plan just to point out again where this was?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. It is the northwestern lot located adjacent to Gould Lane. The crossed, this gray property is the Branford Land Trust property. And the spillway that I was talking about, you can see in the grading right here. So I guess it predates the original application for the subdivision.
This is Commissioner Basserman. It's been a while since we walked this property, but in that spillway, was that was on land trust property. It was crushed stone in there, and I can't remember. Did we not have a maintenance issue with that, or am I thinking of a different spillway?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. There was, I believe, an enforcement action a while back prior to the current property owner regarding that spillway. At this point, so there used to be a temporary sediment trap that drained into that spillway. That temporary sediment trap has predominantly been filled in at this point because that was mostly located on lot 7, which is well underway as far as development goes. So there's really very limited drainage at this point with the way that the site has been regraded that goes to that area. So it doesn't really provide much of a function at this point, and a lot of it has grown in with some vegetation.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Is Commissioner Basserman, is staff recommending administrative approval on this?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. Assuming that I look at the plans and it's just those minor comments regarding the sediment erosion controls and those get addressed, I would be comfortable approving it administratively if the commission was comfortable with me doing so.
Commissioner Grenolch, I think that's fine for Jamie to take care of it. It doesn't look to me like there's anything unique about it that would cause any problems other than just monitoring the work as it's done.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Is Mr. DeGioia on the call? No. Then
Yes, Judge, I apologize. I was muted. Thank you, Chairman Basserman. For the record, Michael DeJoya, Donmar Development, I am here.
If this were to be approved administratively, if this would be approved administratively, you'd be able to provide Jamie with the appropriate information she's looking for.
Michael DeJoya, Donmar Development. Yes, of course, as always. Whatever revisions she wants to the sediment and erosion control plan, I'll have it made and submit new plans.
Commissioner Basserman again. Any regrading in this area of late?
Again, Michael DeJoya, Donmar. Chairman Basserman, the grading here is very, very minimal. That lot is pretty much been graded as to the proposed grades on the original approved site plan. There's some minor contour changes once the foundation is done that need to be completed. Other than that, it's going to remain relatively the same as it was in its original state.
Commissioner Basserman, thank you. Just a question, I guess a general question is when these lots get completed, I assume that there's an as-built that's provided as a matter of record, showing the final grading conditions, etc.
Michael DeJoya, Donmar Development. Yes, that's a requirement from zoning, along with a grading plan that has to conform with the original proposed. So the answer to your question is yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion on Inland Wetland 2011-02? Do we need this Commissioner Basserman, do we need a roll call vote or a general consensus okay on this one, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. General consensus is okay.
Any commissioner not feel comfortable with Inland Wetland with agent approval on 2011-02? Hearing none, you got another one, Jamie.
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. The other application is for the interior or rear lot. Its driveway is off of Gould Lane, and it is located behind lots 18 and 19, which have been by and large completed. Those lots have been hydro-seeded and are predominantly stabilized.
Excuse me for interrupting, Commissioner Bassett. We're talking about Inland Wetland 2011-03?
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent, that is correct. And then looking at the subdivision site plan, you can see that there is an off-site inland wetland located to the east. It is actually located uphill of the site, but the site is within the 100 feet of it. So I can go over to the site plan. Grading is largely consistent. Again, I've only briefly looked at this. The grading has been revised to accommodate a walkout basement on the western side, I believe. But the drainage patterns remain consistent. The footing and roof drains tie into a yard drain as per the original subdivision approval. There's some minor modification to the grading of the driveway, but it's predominantly the same as well. Again, I would just want to take a little bit more time to review it and confirm that the erosion controls are satisfactory. I've not reached out to the applicant at all yet, but I did note that the entrance construction pad is scaled to 35 feet, which has been approved on other lots due to where the house is located. But since the house does not restrict the construction pad entrance, I would ask that that be revised to the full standard 50 feet that we typically see, and that are shown on the subdivision plans. Again, given the contours, I would feel comfortable doing this administratively if the commission was comfortable with that.
Is Commissioner Bassman, and how does this site drain, Jamie, and where to?
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. So the 90-foot contour is located near the highest point is in the driveway access and along the northeastern boundary, and it drains southwest towards a yard drain that's existing on site. And then there's another yard drain in the northwestern corner of the site, which then drains out into Lamatra Lane and then into Gould Lane.
Any other questions from the commission? Recommendation from staff is that this be approved administratively upon additional review. I guess a consensus vote would be sufficient on 2011-03. Is there any commissioner that does not feel comfortable with staff approving this? Hearing none, we have an approval for 2011-03. And I guess, Jamie, you'll be in touch with Mr. Joya regarding information that you require to get that administrative approval conducted.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Yes, I will.
Okay.
Michael DeJoy at Donmar Development. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Have a great evening.
You too. Next up, application for review, Inland Wetland 2010-01, 65 Dorchester Lane, construction of a single-family house. Material, again, provided in the Dropbox for review. This was, I think, presented last time. We had a site walk on this. Any additional information, Jamie, you'd like to provide before the applicant gets the floor?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I did do a brief staff report with some possible condition of approval language for the commission to consider, which I sent to the applicant very late this afternoon/evening before taking a break for dinner. So I can share that with the commission, and if the applicant has any questions or concerns, I would encourage them to let the commission know. And a lot of that language is based off of past practice and the standard condition language that we've kind of been keeping on hand as staff members. So we did receive revised plans, which we mailed out, I believe, on Monday and are available in the Dropbox, and I will share momentarily for discussion.
Commissioner Bassman, you can put that on the screen then?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, I am working on it. I'm sorry. All right.
Yeah.
I believe we have the property owner and the engineer present. If somebody's talking, I believe that you're muted.
Hi, this is Jay Govin, owner of 65 Dorchester. Roger's actually at a ZBA meeting tonight. So we have myself and Matt Davidson, I believe, is on the call as well, who did the planting plan.
This Commissioner Bassman has a kind of a refresher. Can you give us the highlights of what you're looking to do here?
Can I speak? Yeah, Jason Nemergut Consulting. I'm the engineer for the applicant. I was kind of confused of when I was supposed to start. So based on the last meeting and the site inspection, we made some revisions to reflect those comments. If you want me to walk you through them. The first comment,
thank you.
Okay. The first comment was regarding the 2-on-1 slope. So we flattened the slopes and the grades to 3-on-1. In doing that, up by wetland flag 17, which is right over on the northeast, off the northeast corner of the house, closest wetland flag. the grade before that was pretty close to the wetlands. We put a 3-foot retaining wall, timber retaining wall, to cut back the disturbance from that wetland flag. From
Mr. Bassman, Jamie, can you point out 17?
Jamie Frederick, and the wetland agent. Wetland flag 17 is located right under the hand.
Okay, thank you.
And in addition to that, I think Matt Davison's here. We have some mitigation plantings at the toe of that wall. In addition to that, we show the roof leaders. They are routed through a stormwater infiltrator unit. And that is designed for, it's a little over the first inch of rain. And anything after that, those units, they're stone up to the surface so that any overflow will sheet flow over the lawn area. In addition to that, we showed the limit of clearing. There is a 15-foot wide proposed access strip down to the, well, it's not, the limit of clearing isn't on this. This is an older drawing. So the dotted lines that go directly from the south corner of the house to the wetlands, that's going to be a 15-foot wide cleared access strip to the pond. We're going to align it to avoid any large specimen trees. There's not a whole lot of them out there, and everything's going to be hand cleared, flush cut, and just the natural ground surface is going to be maintained. And part of the other mitigation area, there's some proposed plantings over adjacent to the pond itself. And that is going to be done with a
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up the latest plan that shows the modification for the 15-foot access.
Hi, Jamie. This is Matt Davison, soil scientist and professional wetland scientist.
Hi.
Would it be okay to just speak quickly to the mitigation while you pull that up, or?
Sure. Let me. Yeah. Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, if you would like to speak to that while I'm looking for the latest plan, absolutely.
Thanks, Jamie. Again, so Matt Davison, professional soil scientist, professional wetland scientist. Mr. Galvin engaged me I did the original delineation, and he engaged me to do a mitigation plan to incorporate some plantings to provide some mitigation for the development. I did a couple of site inspections to try to identify sort of logical areas to do the mitigation. Of course, the first area is at the base of the retaining wall. I provided a letter also for the record. It was dated November 4th. The mitigation area 1 is at the base of the retaining wall. It's an area that will be disturbed during construction. And what I propose to do there is just a native wildflower mix. I think it's easy to maintain, and will also provide access to the wall in case you get down there to do anything, but also provide native vegetation there to revegetate that area. The second mitigation area, which is mitigation area 2, is right there in the sort of the center of the screen there, adjacent to the pond. It's an area that corresponds to an area along the pond where there's no overstory right now. and it's essentially dense invasive species in that area. It's for the most part multiflora rose with some autumn olive and some vine honeysuckle. And what that mitigation area would propose to do is establish some canopy coverage there to discourage the invasives and try to get the native species to sort of take hold in that area. The mitigation area starts with the removal of the invasive species, which I'm proposing to do mechanically, just with a little mini excavator. If they just pull the shrubs up, there'll be minimal ground disturbance, and it's the most effective way to get rid of invasives. And then once the invasives are pulled out, it would just be planting. It's a variety of native trees. And then I also have some native shrubs in there. All of the shrubs that are proposed, or most of the shrubs, are tall growing shrubs like nannyberry, alder, shadblow, things that will, they can grow, 15 to 20 feet tall. Again, with the intent there to establish some type of canopy coverage in there, to discourage the invasives from gaining a foothold in there again. I don't envision much in the way of ground disturbance there, so I'm not proposing any ground cover plantings. I think so. Essentially, just be what's there now, which is almost like just a forest floor, just leaf litter and things. And then I've also proposed a couple years of monitoring to make sure that the area, more than anything, that the plantings remain healthy and that the invasive species are under control.
Commissioner Basserman, the topsoil stockpile area down in the bottom left of the map that I'm looking at, is that topsoil from the site? Is that topsoil brought in? Where is that?
Jason Never Consulting. Yeah, that's topsoil that's stripped off the site as part of the construction activities.
And this Commissioner Basserman again. And then is that temporary, or is that being stockpiled even after construction is complete, or what?
Jason Never Consulting. That is temporary.
Okay. Commissioner Basserman, do we have, maybe it's on page 2, do we have the appropriate hydrology characteristics of the site before and after?
I'm not sure what you're asking as far as runoff and stormwater runoff.
Correct.
Yeah, I think with the typically the disturbance in an impervious surface is fairly minimal, and we're handling that by putting the first inch of runoff back into the ground. I don't see it as being a large enough increase to warrant anything additional.
Commissioner Basserman, Jamie, question, I guess, for our regulations, etc. Does the criteria and information provided for this site match what our requirements are in the regulations?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I believe that it does. I believe the commission can, per section 7.8, require additional information such as stormwater calculations for various storm events. But I think that's usually at the commission's request rather than a default requirement.
Mr. Basserman, given the issues that we have had with stormwater and the likelihood that stormwater issues are going to increase in terms of disturbance, etc., I guess I'd like to see for this site some stormwater calculations to give us some comfort that we're not creating a bigger issue here than we have today.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I think that for a single family home, this is pretty typical, but at the same time, the commission should make a decision on what they feel they need to make a determination. So if that's something that you would like, then the application could be continued to the next meeting to allow for that information to be provided.
Jason Nemergut Consulting. I'd just like to add one thing, and typically the runoff is, we do stormwater control to protect downstream neighbors. On this particular site, it's going directly into a large pond, so the increase would hardly even be noticed on this particular site. It's not going to wash out a neighbor's lawn or do any sort of damage like that.
Commissioner Bassman, that's a fair comment, as long as I guess I have comfort that the hydrological effects of a storm flow from, the proposed structure into the pond, and it's not going anywhere else.
Commissioner Glenalch, all of the water that's going on the basically the house roof is going to be put into the ground, so that really isn't unless you had an extra heavy rainfall. But again, all of that is pervious surface, and you're going to have basically the same drainage as you've got now, all the way down to the pond. I mean, the water's going to flow downhill, and no reason that it should do any erosion either.
Mr. Bassman, what's the change in elevation between the house and the pond, or the house and the wetland, I guess, either?
Jason Nemergut Consulting, it looks like it's about 14 feet.
From house to pond?
Correct.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, just to confirm, the stormwater calculations is per section 7.8 of the regulations, and so it's at the commission's request and is not a requirement by default.
Commissioner Bassman, thank you, staff. Somebody want to make a motion on 65 Dorchester Lane?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, before going that far, does the commission want to take a look at the staff report that I drafted up with some considerations for conditions?
Yes.
That would be, I think, appropriate.
Oops. Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, I'll just run through them real quick. The first one pertains to the fact that on the detail sheet, there's the detail for the wood chip berm states that it shall not be used in lieu of silt fence without prior approval by the inland wetland agent, but the construction sequence doesn't specify that. So if that's significant to the commission, I've drafted a condition that could be applied to have that clarified. The second condition pertains to monitoring of the mitigation areas. The applicant is proposing to monitor for 2 years. I took some standard language that we kind of had on hand and put the monitoring into that. I don't know if the commission wants to require a bond, but I provided some language in case you do. You could require the monitoring as a condition of approval without the bond. And then 3 is the requirement of an as-built survey with the improvements And then 4 is certification by the project engineer that the stormwater system was installed per the approved plans. 5 is the standard inspections that we would apply as staff for this level of a project. And then I've got the standard conditions, which apply to all permits, and the general provisions, which apply to all permits. And the general provisions are per statute or per regulation, sorry. And of course, the commission can modify any of these conditions, not apply any of these conditions, add additional conditions. But I just wanted to provide this as a think tank, I guess.
Looks, Commissioner Bassman, looks like a federal template. I guess question on 2, for the mitigation planning area, says survival 85%. Don't we have usually a time frame associated with that?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. If mitigation is required per the regulations, then the requirement is for 5 years of monitoring and 85% survival. The mitigation for this application is not required by the regulations specifically. It was provided by the applicant in response to commission comment, and they have proposed to monitor for 2 years. I believe I did add the 85% as a marker based off of the language that's in the regulations for the monitoring of mitigation areas.
Commissioner Bassman, where do I see the 2 years, I guess?
2 years is not spelled out in the condition. It says monitoring of the mitigation planting area shall be completed pursuant to the site plan sheet 1 of 3 dated November 5th, 2020, which is where it spells out. And then in A, it does say growing seasons. If you would like, I can show the site plan again, which pulls out or specifies the details for the monitoring.
What's that sheet? What'd you say? Sheet 1 of 3?
Yeah. Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Under the monitoring note on sheet 1 of 3, it says mitigation planting areas will be monitored for the first 2 growing seasons following construction. Reports will be submitted to the town of Branford annually, no later than December 15th of each year. Monitoring reports shall include the percent survival of plantings, observations of invasive species, and extent of herbivory and vegetation development. Remedial actions recommended and or completed will also be provided. The first year of monitoring will be the first year that these areas have been through a full growing season. After completion of growing season after completion of construction and planting. For monitoring purposes, a growing season starts no later than March 31st. If the success standards are not met, recommendations for additional monitoring/corrective actions will be provided.
That's pretty complete.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Granowitz, do we need a bond, do you think? I'll be glad to make a motion, but I'd like to find out whether anybody feels that we need a bond.
It's for Commissioner Bassman. I guess, is that something that we would say is kind of standard operating procedure for us or not, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. I am not really sure, to be honest, in this case, whether or not that would be a standard practice for the commission to require a bond. I know it is when it's the 5-year monitoring, but I'm not sure when it's less, whether there's a past practice of requiring the bond consistently.
Commissioner Bassman, I guess, what is the detrimental effect if, in fact, we didn't achieve, let's say anywhere near the 85% condition? What's the harm?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I guess it would be the fact that they went in and removed the vegetation and didn't meet the goal of having done so. However, I don't think the bond is necessary to establish to meet that end goal anyways, because if you make it a condition of approval that the monitoring must be completed consistent with the site plans, then they still need to submit the reports and complete the remedial actions as recommended in the report. So the bond is another tool to ensure that that happens, but without the bond, it would still be a requirement of the permit if you made it a condition. Well, either way, it's already on the site plan, so.
Right. But Commissioner Bassman, I guess the detrimental effect is that we'd have, again, without the cover that the applicant talked about, we'd have a increase in invasives, I assume.
This is Commissioner Boda. I think that, yeah, the purpose of the bond is in those instances in which we've had where the applicant, the permit holder doesn't end up completing the either the monitoring or the implementation of the planting plan to its fullest extent. And then we have in the past used the bond to do the work. So that has occurred. It's not a common occurrence. But I think that it goes to Chairman Basserman's question, which is in the scenario that the applicant doesn't follow through, what is the degree of the impact to the wetland? And if it is significant, then that would be the reason why we would have the bond, to ensure that the wetland is ultimately protected. So in this instance, I would think that there would be a bond for the planting, particularly that closest to the pond area. And while I'm have the mic, I'm not sure why we wouldn't hold to the 5 years. That I would just assume that that's our standard practice, and I'm not. I guess I don't know where the 2 years came from. So I would just assume that we are we implement our regs and our practices in a predictable and uniform way, so that everyone knows what is likely to occur as these applications are turned into permits.
Commissioner Bassman, the other thing is it may have been implemented, but again, given the survival aspect of this, with all the good intentions of getting it done, if we don't get survivability, the 85% level, which we have used in the past, then we're something's at risk. The wetland is at risk. So I guess I would move that we provide or require a bond for this endeavor. And excuse me, Commissioner Basserman again, and to Commissioner Boda's point that we try to be uniform with our survivability calculation of 85% and 5 years.
Commissioner Granwalch, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the application IW 20.11.01 for 46 Parish Farm Road for a construction of a detached garage and associated grading. I'm sorry, I got the wrong one. IW 2010.01 at 65 Dorchester Lane, construction of a single family home. In accordance with the plans submitted and with conditions that have been, or including the conditions that were submitted by staff, and that a bond would be required, and I believe that would be determined by Jamie based upon the amount of plantings that we're talking about, the value of them. Is that correct, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Motion should be made and seconded and then discussed, but the condition specifies how the bond shall be formed.
The motion
Commissioner Kraus, I second the motion.
So this is Commissioner Boda. I think I'm wondering about the list of possible conditions for permitting for consideration, like the wood chip berm shall not be used in place of the silt fence. There's a list of them here, and I think that they are reasonable, appropriate, and with the one adjustment that the planting plan, the planting monitoring be extended to 5 years. And I don't recall the language, but I think it's reports are to be submitted twice a year at the beginning and at the end of the growing season annually. So I would propose that the motion be amended to include the conditions in the document entitled 65 Dorchester Lane Staff Report under possible conditions for consideration.
Commissioner Reynolds, I'm a little confused. I understand the 5 years. What else did you want to change from what the staff report indicated?
Nothing. This is Commissioner Boda. I did not. So the change of the monitoring plan, and I didn't hear in your motion the inclusion of the conditions for consideration included in your motion to approve the permit.
I thought I had included it, but I do.
I may have
included it, and I would amend my motion to make the review period of the monitoring of the mitigation planning area to be 5 years instead of 2.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. For clarification, would that be 5 years consistent with section 7.10 of the regulations, which is the section that specifies the monitoring requirements?
Yes.
Any further discussion on the motion and the amended motion?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, if I believe Commissioner Kraus seconded that, can you state whether or not you're in agreement with the modifications?
I am in agreement with the modification.
Commissioner Bassman, any further amendments, changes to the motion that's on the table for review? Okay, then we'll take a vote. Commissioner Begeman?
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Boda?
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Grenache?
Commissioner Grenache, aye.
Commissioner Kraus?
Commissioner Kraus, aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Commissioner Sullivan, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Next up, Inland Wetland 2010-02, 37 Applewood Road, for an in-ground pool, a pool house, residential addition, associated drainage, grading, and landscaping. Again, we had a site walk on this particular site. Any additional information that the staff has received that the commission should be aware of before we turn it over to the applicant?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I requested some additional information regarding clarification details on the stormwater, and revised plans were received and put in the Dropbox. And I believe that's by and large it for the modifications. I'll pull up the latest plans, and I believe we have the applicant present to discuss.
Great. The applicant has the floor while Jamie is putting up items on the screen.
Good evening, Matthew Pop, landscape architect, a professional wetland scientist from Environmental Land Solutions. I prepared the wetland mitigation plan and the wetland narrative. Redis and Mead, they were the project engineers. They're from Stanford, so they prepared the site plans too. The site is approximately 1.0 acres in size. It contains a house near the center of the site, the driveway, a deck, lots of lawn area around the house. There is a kind of a pocket wetland in the north corner of the site. Back in, I think it was maybe the beginning of August, there was a big windstorm. So a lot of the trees that were shown on the plan have fallen down. One of those trees lays across the wetland currently. We're proposing a swimming pool within the lawn area. The pool will have a cartridge type filter, so there's no backwash from the pool. The pool is about approximately 45 feet from the wetland. The patio's about 40 feet from the wetland. There's minor grading associated with the pool. There will be some tree removal along the property line to the north. There is also proposed a pool house or cabana, which is on the far side of the pool. And then there's an addition proposed. It's just that right now the addition is just an envelope. An addition will fit within that building envelope, and that's about 90 feet or greater from the wetland. With the increase in impervious surface, we have underground detention galleries located between the pool and the wetland area. That's currently in the lawn area. I did prepare a wetland mitigation plan, and it includes planting some of the lawn areas around the wetland, proposing one shade tree, a swamp white oak, 3 understory trees, a shad and flower and dogwood, 16 shrubs. And those areas will be protected by our boulder row and also the pool fence. So there is kind of downslope and north of the boulder row, and pool fence will be maintained in a natural state. So we'll be removing lawn area around the wetland pocket. We do have erosion controls showing on the plan. The site is, somewhat gently sloping, so I'm not that concerned about erosion. The homeowner would like to remove the one tree that fell down that lays across the wetland pocket. It's kind of unsightly to them, so they're asking also for that tree to be removed. So in summary, we're proposing a pool, an addition, and a pool house. Those are all located kind of in a lawn area. Stormwater will be detained and treated by underground galleries. Again, erosion, I don't think is a concern on this site because it's gently sloping. We have a mitigation plan that enhances the wetland by removing lawn from bordering the wetland. And we have mitigation is protected by a boulder row and the pool fence. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Jamie Frederick, and the Wetland Agent. Am I not screen sharing right now? I'm sorry.
You're yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So you can see the kind of the wetland is kind of located in the northern corner, the top right corner of the site, right there. Between the pool and the wetland is pretty much all lawn area. You can see the underground detention galleries between the pool and the wetland area. Pool houses right there to the east of the pool, and kind of the building addition, which is located over there. That's, again, just the envelope, the additional fit within that shape. And you can kind of see that 100-foot upland review area line that kind of goes across there. This is the erosion control plan. You can see some of the silt fence, the stockpile areas showing on the site. And this also has the grading on it. And this plan is prepared by Redness and Mead from Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, and this is the planting plan that was discussed, showing the plantings to go in the existing lawn area adjacent to the wetland.
We're sideways on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the mitigation plan.
Commissioner Granolch, can you address the removal of that fallen down tree and that's in the wetlands? How they, what's planned to, how to do that?
So that would be done by hand. Just cut and taken out in pieces there. And then any disturbed areas from within that wetland buffer.
Make me a strawberry shortcake with the pound cake we bought.
Sounds like I'm getting hungry. So again, any disturbed areas by that removal of that tree will be seeded with the wetland meadow mix. You can see that tree there.
Love the pound cake for breakfast tomorrow.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. The applicant did not pay an additional fee for any activity in the wetland because I did not think that was necessarily consistent with past practice, as the activity would be temporary and would not have a long lasting impact on the wetland. I just wanted to point that out in case the commission disagreed and felt that a fee needed to be assessed. But as all the work would be done by hand and they are planning to replant any area or reseed any disturbed areas that need to be reseeded, I was of the impression that historically has not necessarily always had a fee associated with it.
Commissioner Bassman, and given the fact that it's one tree done by hand, and as you say, there's going to be a reseeding, I think we want to provide as much positive reinforcement as possible.
We are proposing that swamp white oak, which would be a shade tree kind of replacement for that tree. With actually it's 4 understory trees proposed.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I do have another staff report with some possible considerations for conditions as well, if the commission wants to review that, or if you want to go back and look at any of the site plans, just let me know which one you want me to pull up.
Commissioner Bassett, I think the conditions would be to look at.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. The first condition is regarding the fact that test pits have not been completed yet regarding the proposed stormwater location. So it's addressing the fact that the findings of that investigation shall be submitted to the agency, and if any revisions are required, that will need to be reviewed. The second condition of approval again addresses the monitoring of the mitigation area, if you will, which is referred to as the wetland buffer area on plan sheet WMP1. They did not specify monitoring duration that I can recall off the top of my head. So I did not provide a time frame. I again used the 85% from section 710 of the regulations. And again, it's the same standard language regarding the bond and modifications to the planting plan. Certification by project engineer that stormwater system has been installed per the approved plans must be submitted upon completion of the project. Erosion control inspection, pre-planting meeting, planting inspection upon completion of plantings, and final inspection prior to removal of erosion controls. And then the standard conditions and general provisions of all permits. So again, the question would be regarding the monitoring duration, and I'm not sure, and maybe I'll ask Matt Pop to speak to whether or not there was a monitoring proposed of the plantings.
I did not propose any, but it's usually after the first year is you have to water the plants to make sure that they survive that first year. But after that, I think these plants will do pretty well. So I think we'll be happy with anything you propose on your end.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent just wanted to also add that it is a different condition than the last application, as they're looking to plant an existing lawn area adjacent to the wetlands. That being said, I don't know what else to say.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Yeah, I'm looking at WMP1, and there is nothing regarding monitoring. 2 year, 5 year, 1 year. There's nothing in there regarding the monitoring. So I'm concerned that it's absent at all. And I understand the condition is different than the last one, but in some respect, we need to have a monitoring note on the condition, because it is not in WMP1. Excuse me, Commissioner Bassman, again. I guess it does raise the issue of is a 5 year monitoring overkill in this or not? There are still trees that are going to be planted that serve a purpose regarding the wetland, and so again, I'm not comfortable with the total deletion of any monitoring.
When I was thinking about it, I think I was maybe hoping that maybe a 2 year monitoring period for those plantings. Again, once those trees survive those first 2 years, the shrubs, I think that they should be, fine. Again, they won't be in an area that won't be disturbed, protected by the pool fence and the boulder barrier.
Commissioner Bassman, Jamie, you've looked at the plant list and you're okay with the list as identified on WMP1?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I am.
They're all native.
Yep.
And available.
Any further discussion on this application? Any amendment to this, Commissioner Bassman? Any amendment to the conditions that staff has prepared?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, just to be clear, these are just recommendations for consideration. They're not necessarily recommended conditions, particularly in regards to condition number 2. It's really up to the commission what they want to see and require. So if you want monitoring, but you don't want to require a bond, you could take condition 2 and omit section A. I don't have a duration specified, so specifying whether 2 years or 5 years or somewhere in between would be required. And again, the monitoring section of the regulations is section 710 if anyone's interested in looking at that.
Commissioner Basserman, I guess for the filling in the blank on the number of years, I wouldn't want to see this any less than 2 years. And my only concern is, again, how do we determine as a commission that application A qualifies for a 2-year period as opposed to application B that requires 5 years? And I'm not sure I have a good handle on the differentiation. But I can clearly see the differences between this application and the one prior. Does any commission feel that less than 2 years is appropriate?
Commissioner Granolch, I would go for 2 years, not less, but 2 years.
Is there general consensus on 2 years? Silence doesn't help here.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Granolch.
Why don't you make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we approve application IW 20.10.02, 37 Applewood Road for construction of an in-ground pool, pool house, residential addition, and associated drainage, grading, and landscaping per the plans submitted and in accordance and including the conditions set forth by the our wetlands agent, and that that be filled in and say that the requirement be for 2 years. Do we need a bond? I don't have any reason to require a bond, so I'm going to leave that out of the amendment. I'm sorry, I'm going to leave any mention of a bond out of my motion, and then that can be discussed.
Is there a second on that motion?
Commissioner Sullivan, I second the motion.
Any other changes to the conditions that staff has suggested that the commission review and incorporate into this approval?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, just for clarification, I'm requesting confirmation that the conditions by staff is referring to the staff report for 37 Applewood Road, and that per the condition number 2, the time period would be 2 years, and that subsection A requiring a bond would not be included. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's Commissioner Granolch saying that. Sorry.
Does the commission wish to entertain a bond for this or not? I guess the motion on the table, Mr. Baskin, the motion on the table to approve inland wetland 2010-02 was articulated without the need for a bond. And since I have not heard any changes to that motion, I guess I heard a second. So we can go ahead and vote unless there is a condition that the commission wants to add to the motion. Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Begeman.
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Boda.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I think we may have lost Commissioner Boda.
Okay. Commissioner Granolch.
Commissioner Granolch, aye.
Commissioner Kraus.
Commissioner Kraus, aye.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Commissioner Sullivan, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good evening.
Good evening. Next up, we have Inland Wetland 2010-03, 287 East Main Street, also known as Riverwalk. Modification and repair of the approved spillways and additional activities that may exceed standard maintenance. We had a site walk not that long ago on this particular site. Any additional information, Jamie, that we need to incorporate into our thinking?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. I requested that the applicant provide a little bit more information on the vegetation removal that was proposed as part of the drainage maintenance / repairs. That letter was received yesterday while town hall was closed and has been uploaded to the Dropbox. And I'll pull it up momentarily. They also provided some additional detail on the outlet elevations to help confirm that the capacity of the stormwater basins would not be impacted as part of the proposed project.
Commissioner Basserman, thank you, Jamie. While you're pulling that up, is the applicant on the call?
I am. My name is Robert Sonicson. I'm a registered professional engineer with Waldo and Associates in Guilford, and
Matt. Thanks a lot.
I'm the engineer for the Riverwalk Association.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it was good. It was good. So thanks a lot. It looks like, do they have to wait a period of time or anything?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. There might be somebody that needs to mute their line.
Oh, hold on a minute. Hold on.
Introduce themselves.
This is Commissioner Basserman. So this letter that we're looking at now addresses the removal of the vegetation. Is that my understanding?
Rob Sonicson for the applicant. Yes, Jamie had a series of questions about the extent of the area of impact. And we responded that the extent of the area of impact for the repairs to the outlet of Basin 8 is limited to just the spillway section and the outlet channel that flows down to the brook. On the site walk that took place, we were able to sort of see it. It's fairly overgrown, and it was getting dark by the time we got out here. But the total area that we've measured for impact is no more than 600 square feet, and that's really confined to the area that we're showing riprap protection. Much of the area already has riprap protection, but we're going to repair it as needed. The extent of the area for the outlet of Basin 7 is a little bit harder to quantify, but I think we did a pretty good job at doing that. The repairs at Basin 7 include the spillway itself, which is shown as the riprap spillway. That hasn't changed from the plans. It also includes the downstream area, which leads to the culvert inlet, which flows then under the cemetery property at 295 East Main Street. There's an area that's about 20 feet long that the water flows after it flows across the spillway to make its way to the culvert entrance. And then there's an area of Japanese knotweed that's growing on the embankment above the culvert. I think everybody saw that clearly during the site walk. The total area, the work in the outlet area is only going to be to remove vegetation that's obstructing the flow. The project is really one to retain and improve the ability of the basins to function the way that they were designed to. And yet there's some vegetation that's clogging up the area and making it more difficult for the outlet water to flow to the culvert inlet and discharge itself across the cemetery into the Branford River system. And the total area that we measured for that whole area of impact is approximately 1,500 square feet, but certainly not all that area will be impacted by the work. And then we did also indicate that any area that's disturbed, that's not covered with riprap, is going to be raked down and seeded with a conservation mix. I provided a specification for the DOT conservation mix seeding. Jamie also wanted to know whether we're going to be removing roots and doing other kinds of soil disturbance. And my response to that question is no. The vegetation is going to be cut flush to the ground, and no earth disturbance is going to take place. Once again, this project in both cases is a project to repair what I see from an engineering perspective as damage to the original spillway outlets. And it's not really a vegetation mitigation project. And so the vegetation roots are not going to be taken out unless some of them come out when the cutting's being done. And no herbicides are being proposed. We're not trying to kill the vegetation in the area at this point in time. We're trying to remove the obstructing vegetation. And so no herbicides at this point. And going beyond that, the stormwater operation and maintenance plan that we've developed for Riverwalk includes a 5-year plan, which will go deal with both these two basins and all of the other 6 basins in the system. And we're proposing looking at doing vegetation management both here and in those other basins going forward in the 5 years. And one of the items that Jamie put, and I think it was a great condition that she was recommending in the report that she submitted to you, and she'll discuss that, I'm sure, in a bit, is that as we go forward, if there is going to be some additional vegetation management, either in these basins or in the other basins, that it would be presented to the commission, and an approval would be granted. A determination would be made whether it was significant enough that it would invoke a permit process. And I think that that's a great way of controlling what goes forward with the overall operation and maintenance. And there's going to be an annual report done, and it's going to specifically identify whether the invasives are coming back and whether we think that they need to be addressed. So that's the way that I think that the process is going to work going forward. And we tried to put more detail on our plan that showed, elevations, the actual elevations of the spillways. We're not changing them. We're going back and repairing them to what the original approved design was on both of these basins.
Commissioner Basserman, when you talk about repairing the spillway, and I understand the raking bit, is this going to be additional riprap provided in that area, and that's basically it, or is there any other fabric or other material that's going to be tried to be used to control the impact on the invasive?
The way that you build a standard riprap spillway is you first prepare the sub base. It's there'll be a gravel sub base that is going to be prepared. It's about 6 inches thick usually. On top of that, modified riprap will be placed, but there'll be a filter fabric, a geotextile filter fabric in between the gravel and the riprap, so that the sand doesn't get up into the riprap, and it also doesn't wash out the gravel underneath the riprap. And that's sort of the standard cross section. And that's what we're going to be doing in both of the spillways. The original plan called for just a geotextile erosion control mat. It's deteriorated over time, and that's the reason there's erosion that's taking place in both of the spillways. And the riprap will prevent that from happening again in the future.
Thank you.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. So the main reasons why this is before the commission now is because it is the change in material for the spillway, which should have longer term stability, but also for Basin 8, the foot of that riprap extends into the wetland, which is an activity I cannot approve as the agent. And then for Basin 7, they're proposing to do some vegetation removal as needed to promote flow between Basin 7 and this inlet that drains through the cemetery property out into the river. So again, that's activity in a wetland that cannot be reviewed administratively. If the commission has any questions for the applicant.
Commissioner Basserman, you prepared a condition for this activity as well, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I do have a staff report with a couple considerations for approval. Again, standard conditions and general provisions would apply. And then I've got conditions 1 through 5. The first one is that permission for access to the site through 295 East Main Street shall be provided and submitted to the department for documentation purposes prior to start of work, or an alternative plan for access shall be submitted. 295 East Main Street being the cemetery property. 2 is invasive species shall be disposed of off-site in a manner consistent with the latest guidelines from the Connecticut Invasive Plant Working Group and or the Natural Resources Conservation Service. 3 is additional information on activities indicated to be completed in years 2 through 5 of the Waldo and Associates LLC Stormwater System Operation and Maintenance Plan, dated February 22nd, 2020, on pages 18 and 19. Shall be submitted to the agency / its duly authorized agent for review prior to implementation to determine whether a new permit from the agency is required. That is the long-term plan that the engineer mentioned. And just so that we can confirm whether that's in the scope of the original maintenance plan. And then the 4th one is certification by the project engineer that the stormwater system was installed per the approved plans must be submitted upon completion of the project. And then pre-construction meeting prior to activity on site, and an erosion control inspection, and then a final inspection upon completion.
Are there any comments or amendments that any commissioner wants to offer up regarding the staff report that Jamie prepared for Inland Wetland 2010-03? Are there any additions to the conditions that are outlined in that report? Do I hear a motion being formed for 2010-03?
Richard.
Richard, do you want to make a motion?
Commissioner Grandall, I'll make a motion that we approve Inland Wetlands 20-10.03 for 287 East Main Street, known as Riverwalk. The modifications and repair of the approved spillways and additional activities that may exceed the standard maintenance, and that the conditions as set forth by staff be included in the approval as a condition of approval.
Any second?
Commissioner Kraus, I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion on that motion?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Again, just to clarify, are the conditions set forth by staff the conditions per the staff report for 287 East Main Street, revised November 12th, 2020?
Yes, Commissioner Grandall.
Okay, ready to take a roll call vote on 2010-03. Commissioner Begeman.
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Boda. Still not with us. Commissioner Granalch.
Commissioner Grandall, aye.
Commissioner Kraus.
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Commissioner Sullivan, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Okay, Inland Wetland 200806, 41 Brainerd Road, Lot 3, single family home construction.
Thank you.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Per the beginning of the meeting, D and E have been relocated to agent approvals. So the next item is other business.
Thank you for that. Inland Wetland 200701, 434 East Main Street, office building and associate site improvements. I guess the first thing we have to do is consider the bond request.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. There's been a request that the commission consider surety bond be allowed for a portion of the bond. Estimates have been provided by the applicant and reviewed by town staff. And I will pull up a comparison of the estimates that have been provided and the review by town staff, and also the bond section of the regulations for the commission's review during this discussion. And the applicant is present to discuss any questions the commission may have and also bring up any concerns that they may have in regards to the commission's consideration.
This Commissioner Basserman, did you have a review with town council regarding the request for surety?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So the conditions of the regulations allow the commission to approve up to 50% of a bond that exceeds $10,000 as surety bond, and the remainder shall be cash, check, or certified check. So I believe that as it stands, the applicant is requesting that 50% of the bond be approved as surety bond.
first item under that request for bond is review of the estimates. Is there something you can post, Commissioner Bassman, something you can post for that, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So the bond estimate submitted by the applicant was $40,860.20, which includes the erosion controls, the plantings, the monitoring, and seeding for the mitigation area. Review by town staff. I've highlighted the items in yellow are the items that exceed the amount that was provided by the applicant. With using the town minimums, it would be $50,550.92. And under the erosion and sedimentation control measures, those minimums were provided by the engineering department based on DOT pricing where available and actual pricing obtained on bids the town has solicited for. The 105 figure for the chokeberry, I added based on the original estimate that was provided for the different plant materials. Originally, the chokeberry was consistent pricing with the pin oak and red maple, and the $28 seemed out of place, so I modified it to $105. I would certainly be open to any revisions that the applicant might have regarding that figure. I unfortunately did not convey that issue to the applicant or the permit holder until this afternoon. So they have not had a lot of time to respond.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Let's see, who do we have here for the applicant?
Vin Giordano here. Also, Matt Bruton from BL Companies is on the line too, to the extent that there might be any engineering questions, which I don't believe there will be, but he's here. But in regards to the request for bonding and the quantification, I'm here to make some specific requests on those issues or on those conditions, if you will.
Feel free to continue, Mr. Giannano.
Sure. So in terms of the quantification, we're about 20% off from the town's estimate. We're at 40,000. They're at 50,000. The biggest items there are the four highlighted items are the silt fence, the hay bales, the silt sacks, and the erosion control matting. We did a comprehensive analysis of that. We do this kind of work regularly, and we know what the costs of these are. We know what the cost of our labor is. So these are the prices that we develop with a modest markup. So that was the basis for our pricing based on actual performance by our crews and by our company, inclusive of what has taken place thus far at 434 East Main Street with silt fencing and hay baling. In terms of the erosion control matting, we had an update in our plan there that increased the matting from 21,000 square feet to 32,329 square feet. So that's a fairly significant increase, which it is what it is. I'm not going to dispute the engineer's analysis of that. However, the unit price on that is something that I would question. We have pricing from Superior Products on that type matting that was specifically requested, which is, if you will, a natural fiber type matting. And so at $68.40 a roll for an 896 square foot roll, it amounts to about 8 cents a square foot for that matting. And then we estimate that that 896 square foot of matting can be put down by a couple laborers in about a half hour. So that's another 7 cents. So that's where we get the 15 cents. We marked it up to 20 cents on our estimate. The town has 38 cents, which we feel is excessive in that particular instance. The last item, and I won't bore you with these details, but the last item is the silt sacks. And we can buy those silt sacks again from Superior Products for, let's see, for $67.14. That's for a high velocity silt sack. And it takes a labor, 2 labors, if you will, about a half hour to install one of those. So again, that's about $130. We carried $176. The town is at $200. Again, it's only 6 silt sacks, not a big deal, but that's just the basis for our numbering that I wanted to just explain. So notwithstanding other difference there, we're certainly open to compromise on that issue if that's possible. But going beyond that, as far as the consideration for the surety or for the bonding or the security, if you will, that the erosion control and the planting gets done properly and maintained properly. I would first cite some brief history on that particular property. We've owned it for about 15 years, but over the last 3 or 4 years, it has kind of left its indigenous state when we had approval to put a significant stockpile of earth on it. And for 3 years, we've maintained that pile diligently so as to prevent any erosion. I think throughout the process of the inland wetlands proceeding, which I will compliment the Wetlands Commission on, and BL companies for their engineering. I thought Andrew Schaefer and Matt Bruton did a super job in providing for good engineering, which we have a retaining wall there, which in and of itself provides protection. We have silt fence and hay bales behind that wall on the wetland side of the wall. We have a swale on the upland side as we develop the fill. And so we feel as though we have good practices, we have good history, we have good engineering, and also a good contractor doing the job. So I would certainly request that bonding approval, and if possible, to increase the amount of bond approval beyond the 50%, if that's something that the commission could consider in this particular instance, if you will. So again, we appreciate the consideration that the Wetlands has given us, that the commission has given us up to this point. And we're anxious to work closely with Jamie and her staff, as well as the commission, in proceeding with a very successful project. Thank you.
Commissioner Granolch, I have a couple of questions that maybe Jamie can answer. My first question is, on the planning and zoning approval, do they require a bond? And is this bond, how does this work? Is this a separate bond, or are they commingled together, or what?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, the planning and zoning approval, it is my understanding, does also require a bond, and it is separate from the inland wetland requirement. And so it's separate.
My question would be, do they bond the same thing? Are we bonding it twice?
I believe that both agencies have required bonds for the same items. There might be a difference in the planning and zoning requirement regarding landscaping requirements. Our bond does not cover the landscaping plants that would be located within, say, the parking islands and along the street. I don't know if their requirements extend to the mitigation area or not. And I would imagine they don't cover the monitoring reports. The condition of approval from inland wetlands did not grant consideration towards whether or not planning and zoning would bond for these items. So I would caution the commission in taking that into consideration, as I don't know what in the regulations would allow you to do so.
This is Commissioner Basserman, and speaking of the regulations, I don't know that we have any flexibility on the percent on the surety, do we?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. Unfortunately, the way the regulation is written, there really is no flexibility to provide for more than 50% of the bond as surety. I'm sorry. Got too many things open.
Jamie, while you're looking to get to the bond port, yeah. It's Commissioner Bassman. Yeah, I don't see anything in here that gives the commission latitude to change that. Commissioner Bassman, I guess what is the biggest discrepancy on price? And Jamie, I guess that brings up the question of how were the prices that we reviewed before Mr. Giordano was able to articulate some of the differences on those costs. How did we come up with those highlighted areas for dollar?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. For the first section, the erosion and sedimentation control, I requested that the engineering department review the unit prices, and their review is based on DOT pricing and unit prices that have been received through town bids. So the thought process is that if the agency had to go out and bid to have the work completed because it was not completed by the permit holder, these would be prices that the town could expect to receive. So the prices might not be consistent with the contractor's prices because it's based off of the DOT pricing, and again, bonds that have been received by or obtained. Pricing obtained on bids the town has solicited for.
Commissioner Grenolch, I think the explanation is probably that the town and DOT prices are usually based on prevailing wage projects and work, and I assume that you could correct me if I'm wrong, then, but I would assume that these are based upon just non-prevailing wage work.
Yes, this is a project for our own account, and we intend to do it as cost effectively as possible. So you're correct, Dick. This will be done non-prevailing wage.
Yeah. So that would explain to me why there's a difference.
It's Commissioner Bassman. Yeah, certainly I can see the difference. Jamie, have we used the DOT, work and estimates on other bond assessments?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. It is standard practice to have the town engineering department review the provided bond estimates as part of the process. And it's my understanding that's how they typically review such requests.
But in a couple of cases, Commissioner Bassman, in a couple of cases, the difference between that review by the town engineering department and what the contractor, the applicant here, is experiencing through his normal business relationships, etc., is not trivial.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. I certainly understand that. I think the consideration for the commission to take into account is the fact that the bond is intended to cover if the items are not completed by the permit holder. So to take the pricing that the permit holder could get isn't necessarily reflective of what the commission would have to pay to achieve the same thing. So by going with the lower estimate, it might prohibit the commission from being able to fully implement all of the items.
And what is the delta between, Commissioner Bassman, what is the delta between the two estimates? How much money are we talking here?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. The difference between the two estimates is $9,600. $90.72.
If I may, Commissioner, this is Van Giordano. Jamie hinted on something a few seconds ago that I think is important for consideration, is that this estimate is reflective of the full cost of implementing the erosion control plan. A certain percentage of it is already done. Silt fences, the tracking matting out front is already done with asphalt apron and stone, and it is going to require maintenance, yes. The cost of the rest of the implementation is reflective. And in my opinion, the most that the commission should have to consider is emergency maintenance of this if the contractor doesn't perform. And in this case you're looking at the contractor here, 4 generations in the town and multiple projects and whatever. So, I think that fair consideration for this would be appropriate. Thank you.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, just one additional, I think that there's only one additional factor I wanted to point out, and that is the town minimum is a price that would be consistent upon across items that are consistent. So silt fence, it would always be the same unit price. Things that might have varying details would vary based off of that detail, such as possibly something like a diversion swale. So if the commission were to accept the applicant's quantity that is lower than the town provided minimum, it might be difficult to consistently assess that moving forward with other applicants. Just for thought.
That just, Mr. President, they just took a crooked path and made it more crooked. I don't know. I guess from my standpoint, I think that there is an opportunity here to reflect the experience that the applicant has in a number of these areas where they can provide the material as well as install the material at a maybe more efficient rate than what the DOT estimates have provided. So I guess as a thought here is split the difference and reduce the was it 50,000 by 5,000, given the difference was about 9 something.
Mr. Chairman, do you want a motion?
That's a good next step, Mr. Goodalsh.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we set the bond amount for $45,500, and that the applicant is allowed to provide 50% of that amount in a surety bond, since we obviously can't change our regulations and allow any more than that in a surety bond. We don't have the power to do it. So that's my motion.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Sullivan, I second it.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote on a $45,000 bond as made by Commissioner Goodalsh. Commissioner Begeman?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, just to clarify, was it 45,000 or 45,500?
I thought the motion was 45 even.
I had written down 45,500.
I'll make sure that amend the motion. If it isn't, I'll make the motion for $45,000 even. The second.
With that clarification, Commissioner Begeman?
Abstain. Commissioner Begeman.
Commissioner Boda is not here. Commissioner Grinalsh.
Commissioner Grinalsh, aye.
Commissioner Kraus.
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Sullivan, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Okay.
Commissioner Basserman, if you may, this is Vin Giordano. I'd like to add one more comment. For future consideration on the cash portion of the requirement, I had some conversation with Jim Finch in town and about the possible consideration of an irrevocable letter of credit with a banking institution as opposed to cash. Now that may not always work for every project, but for the larger projects with a fairly significant cash outlay, an irrevocable letter of credit might be preferable from the perspective of the developer. So I would ask the commission to consider that down the road. Thank you.
Commissioner Basserman, yeah, I think this whole area of how we establish a bond, the rules for the bond, the percent cash versus surety, the other instruments that could be used, et cetera, is an area that is ripe for changes. All of that would have to be incorporated into our regulations and a change in those regulations. And I think your comment about an irrevocable letter of credit certainly provides some flexibility that maybe the existing regulations don't provide for. And so I appreciate the comment. I'm not sure this is going to be something that we can tackle, in the next couple of months, but certainly this whole area needs to get reviewed and be incorporated into a regulation change.
Thank you.
Next up, Inland Wetland 191102, 1151 West Main Street, construction of bank and grocery store. And again, we have a review of the bond request. Let's see, we do have somebody here for the applicant. Got this map. Nuff.
Evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, John Nuff, 147 Broad Street, Milford, Connecticut, on behalf of the applicant. With me are John Schmitz, who's our engineer from BL Companies, and Vin Giordano. I don't know if it's Vin Jr. or Vin the third who's going to be doing this one, but there's actually two things before, that we're asking for, Mr. Chairman. One is for the to set a bond amount, and I think Jamie is kind enough to call me late this afternoon and indicate that she thinks that there was I think a fairly significant error. There's a $46,000 differential in our proposed bond as compared to the town's. I think 29,000 of that is attributed to one item that we can discuss. But also we want to modify condition number 6, which says that the mitigation, you'll recall that we are creating a mitigation area in the southern portion of the property, and that the requirement says that the mitigation must occur prior to wetland impacts associated with site development. Obviously, we're entering the winter months, and so creation of that mitigation area and planting of it will be impossible, but obviously we want to get started on our work. So we're respectfully requesting that we modify condition number 6, and then also have a discussion with regard to the bond amount. Happy to discuss those in either order.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, did you provide an estimate like you did for the prior item in terms of breaking down the assessment of the bond?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. Yes, I can. And I also just want to quickly address the way I interpreted the initial request to bond. They were requesting for surety. Again, I just want to point out that per the regulations, the commission can approve up to 50% as surety. I did a similar comparison of the applicant provided bonds and or estimates versus town provided minimums. As you can see, the biggest difference is between the temporary drainage swale. The applicant reviewed it at linear feet at 278 per unit. The engineering department looked at it in cubic feet and estimated at 180. It's my understanding that when they were reviewing it, they were understanding that the swale was to be lined with 3 feet of stone. However, I am not sure that that's the intent for the full length of the swale. So I thought that that could be addressed by the permit holder this evening. I have the latest plans available, and I believe it was on one of the, yes. So there's the stone check dams, which they provided for separately. And then I believe they have a non-engineered temporary diversion ditch detail, which is probably
You're correct there, Jamie. That's what they that's what that item is.
and that's what a majority of the 500 and
Right. So the 540 is right. It's bringing the water to the temporary pond, the temporary retention pond. And it is. It's not an engineered swale in any way, shape, or form. It's literally a trench that the sheet flow goes to bring the water to the pond. So it goes where we want it to go.
It's Commissioner Bassman. I guess, the prior issue that we had was basically a unit price discussion that Group A, the DOT, said you could do it for so much, and the applicant basically said we could do it for cheaper. This one sounds like it's not as straightforward as that. That the estimate that we had was done one way with certain assumptions, and the applicant or the permit holder now is saying that no, that's not correct. We have a different approach. Am I wrong on that, or somebody steer me in the right direction?
Yeah, no, Pete, Jamie, if you can go back to the drawing that you just had up.
Sorry.
It's okay. Okay, so what we're talking about are these trenches that tie into the temporary retention pond, the little stone check dams along it. Okay, and so what we're doing is we're making sure that the sheet flow of the water on the site is going into the pond and not running directly across the site where we don't want it to go. We're capturing the water and bringing it to the pond. Again, these move about. These are done so that the site stays dry and solid, and the rainwater and the water goes where we want it to go to continue working in the dry, and keeping our site stable. So this is literally an excavator with a laborer behind them, carving a nice little trench, a pitched slope in the ground to the pond. That's all it is. There's no big engineering final, these are all temporary because at the end of the day, that's a parking lot. There's fill that's placed on top of that. So as we're coming up with the fill, we're using to keep positive sheet flow and to keep drainage to the detention pond. That's it. So I think what's in the estimate from what the town is they're thinking of a riprap line swale, something similar to what Rob Sonicson was talking about a few applicants earlier. This is very, very, very different. So that's why. And the standard unit on this is you generally estimate it by the foot because it's a crew that runs out there and and does that as things are moving and as things are changing.
So I guess this Commissioner Bassman, I guess my assessment then is that we have a different plan that the two estimates were based on. One was a simple trench and the other one was a lined riprap trench. And obviously the numbers are going to be different under those conditions.
You're correct.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. To add to that, unfortunately, due to the timing of receiving the information and providing it to the engineering department and bouncing back with clarifications, and with the town hall being closed yesterday, I've not had time to touch base with the engineering department on the specifics since I talked with Attorney John Nuff this afternoon. However, I did briefly talk with the engineering department regarding the fact that there could be confusion as to the detail, and certainly revision considering clarification of the detail could be considered. The price that was provided by the applicant based on just a graded diversion swale similar to the previous application at 434 East Main Street, the unit price does seem pretty consistent with the other application if you were to use the provided estimate. So I think that would be fair given the case that it's not a 3 foot, a swale lined with 3 feet of gravel or crushed stone, and that they have provided separately for the stone check dams, which are also shown on the plan. I would like to point out, however, that again, I've highlighted the items that are different in yellow. So the one that we've been talking about is the temporary drainage swale, which is the most significant item change by far. It was proposed at $1,500 and was modified to $29,160. And then the other items, again, are using, for the most part, the same estimates as applicable from the last estimate that was provided.
Excuse me, this is Commissioner Bassman. So we don't have a difference of opinion on the quantity of the silt fence. It's just the unit price for material and installation.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. As part of the process, we request that the engineer confirm the quantities because the engineer can pull that information directly from the plan. So we are going based off of information provided by the engineer based on the plans that were approved. So yes, it's essentially looking at the unit price. Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. And to add to that, if the commission were to revert to the applicant's price for the temporary drainage swale, the total would be $89,993.60. So it would bring the costs down.
Right. It's John. Now the differential is $27,660 on that one for the on that one item of the drainage swale. The silt fence alone is another $11,000, and the stone check dams are another approximately $5,000. And so that makes up $44,000 of the $46,000 differential.
I think it's also important to note that, you know, the town, as you guys are looking at this, you mentioned on the applicant before that this is if the town needs to go out there and install this silt fence. Well, for this project to even start, the first thing that has to happen out there is the silt fence has to go in, the erosion control has to go in. So the fact of the matter is that the town will never have to go out there and install the silt fence carte blanche because it has to get installed for the project to begin. So I think, as was said earlier, the only real issue that you would have is that if there was a blowout or a issue with the silt fence or the hay bale or something that you felt that the town felt as though they needed to go out and take care of because our response, which we will be on site full time, was not adequate. So again, you're not reinstalling, the price difference on the silt fence, $5 versus $287. You're not reinstalling the silt fence. The silt fence is out there. It's been installed. It's been done. The only thing that you would be doing is repairing a very, very small section of it. And we can go through that on just about every one of the unit price items. The other part is, the DOT or whatever you're getting from other bids. Those units are heavy. Those are units that the DOT uses to budget their projects to make sure they have monies set aside. Like was said earlier by my father, we're contractors. We're out there getting this done. And so I don't think the fact that you'd have to go out and bid an item to replace this or do this erosion control because we were not doing it is a factor here.
This is Commissioner Kraus. I totally understand what you're saying. But unfortunately, we have to treat all applicants equitably. And although, we understand that your word is, and these are your costs, we can't, if we use the town's costs when we make other developers issue bonds, we have to be consistent. So I'm wondering, to anyone on the commission, do we have another project similar to this that we could do some kind of a comparison to? If we want to reduce this amount, do we have a precedent set?
But Commissioner Bassman, I think there's two different issues here. One, on the temporary drainage swale, looks like, given timing of when the information was received, et cetera, the town should review the trench, the fact that it's not going to be lined, riprap trench, et cetera, and provide a different estimate so that we have the same basis for this project as we had for the Roger project in looking at the bond amount. The condition under the silt fence is different. We're not in dispute of what the nature of the silt fence is. It's a question here of the unit price. Kind of the only issue here is the unit price consideration. So I guess from my standpoint, and we would probably need an update from the town given the temporary drainage swale condition, and then relook at these prices to decide if there is a middle ground once we're at least from an engineering standpoint on the same page.
Yeah, Commissioner Granolch, I agree that on that item of the temporary swale, we're comparing apples and oranges here, and we don't have any way of determining, what we're really dealing with. I think that's got to be resolved between further review on that item outside of our commission and get that back to us with, some justification for the higher number or a reduction in it or something.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it's John Duff. Both your regulation, I know you're adhering very strictly to the 50% requirements in your regulations. Your regulations, as well as our specific approval, gives Jamie the authority to set the bond amount. Candidly, we'd like to get going, and we don't want to wait another month to clarify what I think is a really simple misunderstanding that could probably be cleared up in a few days. So we would very much appreciate if you could follow your regulations and authorize Jamie to work with us and your town engineer to set the bond amount in a fashion that gives the town full protection. And I understand, that you're limited with regard to the unit pricing and what has been consistent with other applicants. But on the issue of the drainage swale, I just think that there's a fundamental misunderstanding, and we would just hate to lose a month as a result of that misunderstanding. So I would ask you that you consider that. And then obviously we also need to get have a discussion regarding the modification of condition number 6.
Yeah. Commissioner Bassman, can you post, Jamie, on the screen, the bond area on the regulations? Actually, no, I don't need that. The approval that was granted to the applicant that Attorney Nuff just talked about.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I can. Do you want to finish your discussion regarding the bond first, or have you finished your discussion regarding the bond?
No, I haven't finished my discussion on the bond. I guess Attorney Nuff brought up the issue that you have the authority given the permit that was granted already to set the bond amount. And I guess I'd just like to review the language that he's referring to.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I understand now.
It's condition 4, Jamie. I'll read it while you look for it. The permit holder is to submit to the inland wetland agent an estimate of the cost to bond these items for the agent's review and approval.
Okay, I'm looking at 4.
After approval by the agent, the bond is to be submitted consistent with Section 13 of the regulations prior to the start of work.
Okay, so this is Mr. Bassman. So the way I read this is that you guys submit your estimate to the inland wetland agent, and after review and approval, the agent, consistent with Section 13 of the regulations, will establish the amount.
Exactly, yes.
So I guess you guys submitted a set of numbers. Jamie in her review had a different set of numbers. The basis for that that second set of numbers is not consistent with the first. So assuming that after, again, a subsequent review by the agent with whomever she chooses to consult with in the town, I guess I read this as saying, yes, she can establish the amount outside of waiting for the next meeting.
That'd be terrific. Thank you. I think, Mr. Chairman, we've had a really cordial, wonderful working relationship with Jamie, and she's been very diligent in terms of following up on everything we've done from the start of this application. Obviously, she's working with your town engineer, and we have full confidence that we can, reach an accommodation that is consistent with what we're actually proposing to do.
And I guess I have to just, Mr. Bassman, I have to ask Jamie, are you comfortable, Jamie, with that responsibility?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So my understanding would be that essentially moving forward, we'd be looking to get a modified estimate for the temporary drainage swale based on clarification of the detail for that item, and that the remainder of the town minimum items would be acceptable to the permit holder. Ultimately, I guess what I'm getting at is I'm okay with approving an amount that is based on the town minimums that have been provided as revised due to clarification. But any reduction from that, I would want to bring back to the commission for their consideration.
And that, excuse me, Commissioner Bassett, this is Commissioner Bassett. That's my concern. I think the swale one is the easy one.
That's fine. You know what? If we can, the goal is to get this project moving. So we'll work with Jamie with the town standards, and let's get this project moving.
Okay. That leaves then the modification regarding number 6 of the permit.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, they were also requesting that portion of the bond be approved as surety. So I think the commission should make a motion, and it should probably encompass the fact the commission, I guess it doesn't really need to, but it should, because the bond amount hasn't been determined yet. it should encompass the fact that the bond amount shall be established based on town minimums, as modified based on further review and or discussion with the commission, and that 50% of that bond amount may be submitted as surety.
Commissioner Bassman, Jamie, can you put up condition 6? What would the modification be regarding 6?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, that's kind of a separate topic, so I think we should finalize the bond consideration first.
Well, Commissioner Greenhalgh, I'll make a motion that we approve the submission of a surety bond for 50% of whatever amount is determined by Jamie in setting an amount.
What I heard, this Commissioner Bassman, what I heard, Commissioner Greenhalgh, from staff was that we also articulate, I guess, in the motion condition, what have you, that a review would include use of the town minimums.
I did not include that in my motion because I think she can make that determination on her own.
Jamie Frederick.
I think Jamie, sorry, this is Commissioner Kraus. I think Jamie indicated that she was comfortable, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, she was comfortable negotiating with the swale differences, but not the town unit costs. Am I correct, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Somebody should second the motion and then discussion can occur.
Okay.
And the second is? Do we have a second?
Commissioner Sullivan, I second the motion.
Okay.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So what I was stating was that I would be okay approving the bond amount, assuming the commission is okay with it as well, at the town minimum costs, with the understanding that the town minimum cost for the temporary drainage swale would be adjusted based on clarification on the detail of the drainage swale, and that any further modifications would be brought back to the commission for consideration.
Well, that's what we talked about doing, but my motion was just simply to provide the 50%, whatever you come up with as an amount. I don't think the motion is dictating to you how you figure that amount. I mean, I think based upon the approval that we had received, or that we had given, to put that in your hands to decide. And work it out with them. That's the only thing I was thinking.
This is Commissioner Bassman. I think what staff is, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Jamie, but the staff is trying to put some boundaries around the latitude.
Yeah, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I think, just providing clarification as to contingency as to when it wouldn't be approved by the wetland agent. However, I mean, there's nothing in the motion that specifically precludes it from coming back. But I was also just trying to respond to the question.
No, but by the way, as Vinny indicated, we're not going to contest the unit pricing. So, I mean, if that gives anyone any comfort, we're really only talking about that one item.
Right. Commissioner Bassman. So Jamie, as you just articulated, if we move forward with Commissioner Greenhalgh's motion, which is silent on the issue of unit pricing, nothing in that motion precludes you, if you're uncomfortable, from coming back to the commission. Am I
By
right?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I don't believe so because it says as approved by Jamie. So if I'm not comfortable, I would bring it back to the commission, but I don't foresee that being an issue based on the discussion that has occurred.
Right. So we have a motion on the table, seconded by Commissioner Sullivan. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Begeman?
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Granolsh?
Commissioner Granolsh, aye.
Commissioner Kraus?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Commissioner Sullivan, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Now I guess we move forward to condition 6. And what's the recommendation that be considered?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I met with some of the permit holder party a couple of weeks ago out on site to discuss next steps. I believe they're looking to get started in December on the project. And they plan to start with, my understanding is with the excavation for the mitigation area. However, they are probably going to be done with that prior to the appropriate time to plant the mitigation area and are looking to move on to phase 2 items, which would include direct wetland impacts prior to the planting of the mitigation area. And I mentioned condition 6, which states per phasing shown in applicant's development plans, mitigation must occur prior to wetland impacts associated with site development. Some of the things to consider, I would say, would be the season, obviously, is why they're requesting this. It's my understanding that they would possibly be doing the direct wetland impacts during the winter months if they're allowed to proceed with them prior to the planting, which could be beneficial in the sense that the wetlands might be in their drier state than they would be in the spring season. And also the mitigation reports are to include, I don't remember which condition it is. Per condition 3, should the wetland scientists determine that dewatering the mitigation area is There's another condition regarding the watercourse 1 impacts, and that shall also be assessed in the mitigation report. So if that work were to be completed in a closer together time frame, it would allow for the full duration of the monitoring reports to address that concern as well. I will try and find that condition, but I will hand it over to the permit holder to further explain and correct anything that I might have incorrectly stated and provide additional detail on what they're looking to do.
No, that's accurate, Mr. Chairman, John Nuff. And what I suggested to Jamie in my email, where we requested the condition 6 be revised, is simply not to overthink this, but simply to say that the mitigation must occur as soon as is practicable once the season changes. So I mean, clearly, there's no dispute as to the bond amount with regard to the restoration or enhancement area, and so I mean, the town will be adequately covered in terms of the plantings in that area. Is just as Jamie said, we would be losing upwards of 5 or 6 months before we can get going. So.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent is condition number 2 that I was referencing. The contractor is to notify the inland wetland agent when blasting work associated with watercourse 1 impacts will start and has been completed. The wetland creation report shall also address the status of the remaining portion of watercourse 1 to ensure compliance with the permit. So I think if the commission were to accept this modification as it pertains to the planting of the mitigation area, it would assist in that sense. I think the commission might want to specify that mitigation planting shall be completed as soon as seasonally appropriate, to ensure that the mitigation plantings still occur at the onset of the project rather than starting later on down the road, and to make sure that no invasives overtake the area that has been graded out for the mitigation. But I would imagine the applicant or permit holder would be open to that.
Yes.
This is Commissioner Basserman. So at this point, is there prepared language for the commission to consider regarding the modification of condition 6, or that need to be incorporated into a motion?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I did not prepare language.
Okay.
But I do think the commission should make a motion on whether or not to accept the modification and any conditions such as planting as soon as seasonally appropriate as part of that condition. And again, it's condition number 6 that we're discussing.
And we would be happy to use Jamie's language in lieu of mine. And in fact, I think hers is better.
Jamie, can you articulate that one more time?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, did you provide language, Tarina?
I did, Jamie. In my email to you, I simply said, as you know, the mitigation must occur as soon as is practicable. But you know, your language, I think, is a little bit more precise in terms of, you know, seasonally appropriate.
Okay.
Commissioner Grenall shall take a stab at it. The approval of would you bring that back up on the screen? That's section 7.
Oops.
Yeah. That section 7 of our conditions, or paragraph 7, whatever it is, of our conditions of approval.
Commissioner Garage, I think it's 6.
Yep, go ahead.
Go ahead, but you said 7. I think it's 6.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thanks for correcting me. That the section 6, or provision 6 of the conditions of approval regarding the phasing of the development plans, that the provision for mitigation does not need to occur prior to wetland impact, but should be completed as soon as practical based on the weather conditions. Does that work for you?
Commissioner Basserman, I guess weather conditions as a
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Can somebody second it and then discussion?
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Begemon, second.
So Commissioner Basserman, is the weather condition a substitute for growing season?
Growing season is better.
We can say, I can amend my motion to say weather conditions and as applicable to growing season.
Or seasonally appropriate.
I like Commissioner Basserman. I like seasonally appropriate. So do we want to articulate that one more time?
I'm not sure what I said now.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, if you're acceptable to the modification, then you could just state that, and then the second should also agree to the modification.
So we need a second for the modification, correct?
The person that motioned and seconded should either accept or decline the modification.
That's fine on my motion.
Commissioner Begemon, accept.
Commissioner Grenall?
You're asking for a vote?
Yes.
Yes, aye.
Commissioner Kraus?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Commissioner Sullivan, aye.
And Commissioner Begeman, I assumed that was an aye from your standpoint.
Commissioner Begeman, aye, yes, thank you.
Commissioner Basserman, yes. Okay.
Thank you all.
Right.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, you too. We have next item up, regulation fee subcommittee. Last call for members as a kind of a loop back. When last we met, we decided that, two members volunteered to be part of a subcommittee to look at regulation fees, with the idea that maybe we could get some focus with a smaller group and not burden the full commission with additional meetings, especially this time of year and, under conditions that we have to meet. Commissioner Rose also suggested that maybe, given the fact that it is a smaller group, that we could meet in person to discuss same. So we really have two items that I can think of on this particular item. One is, are there any additional members of the commission that would like to volunteer time to review the regulation fees? And secondarily, staff has had some conversation with council regarding in-person meeting that she could probably share, because there are some conditions that we would need to consider if we wanted to do an in-person meeting. So I guess first up in that regard is, are there any additional commission members that would like to participate in the regulation fee subcommittee? Last call. It's going to be a real small subcommittee. Okay, hopefully we can find some time to look at this. We'll be back to the full committee at some point with a date. And Jamie, you want to mention the conversation you had with town council regarding in-person?
Before we go there, this is Commissioner Begeman. That subcommittee looking at fees, will they be looking at the bond fees? No.
I don't believe we're prepared to do that. I think the information that the staff has and will share is really associated with the regulations and maybe what other towns are charging for similar activities. We've got some definitional things to go over to make sure that we kind of line up. But I think bond would be maybe outside the purview of the regulation fee subcommittee. I think some more work has to be done, as Mr. Giordano talked about. There are some other considerations that we may need to review with the finance area in the town before we were looking to incorporate that into our regulation.
Thank you.
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. Yeah, the bonds were not included in the creation of the subcommittee, so it would not be within their purview to discuss that. However, per previous comments from the commission, staff is looking at preparing some materials for consideration. Whether those are prepared in a timely manner for this round of revisions or not is yet to be seen, but that is something that we are working on. And then in regards to the in-person meetings, it is my understanding that per executive orders, if you were to have an in-person meeting, you still need to have a remote option. And then also, in talking with town council about those requirements, he mentioned that he would recommend not having in-person meetings, which I would personally also kind of echo, given the fact that COVID cases are increasing. So at this point, it'd kind of be my recommendation not to move forward with the in-person meeting, because we'd still have to go through the process of setting up a remote meeting as well. And it's just better to be safe than sorry. So for time being, I think we're going to be planning for a remote meeting. However, if there's further requests for consideration, we can look further into it. And given the fact that we only have one subcommittee member present, we can work on setting a date for the subcommittee meeting. And that will be noticed with an agenda on the town website. Any other questions on that?
We're not going to establish that tonight.
I don't think that Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I don't think that'd be fair given that Eric's not present.
Right. Okay. And if anybody has a, change of heart and wants to join a group of two, let me know. All right, enforcement. DC 2010-01, 69 Chestnut Street, clearing and earth disturbance without a permit to conduct a regulated activity. Commissioner Bassman, I have a question, Jamie. I've got a site plan, but the address is 67 Chestnut Street. Is this the same property?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. The property owner is 67 Chestnut Street, LLC, I believe.
Yep.
So that's probably referencing the property owner.
Okay. But this is the map that I should be looking at?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I have the map open now and we'll share it momentarily. And yes, it does say 67 Chestnut Street, and that's because that's the property owner. We do have, it looks like, the surveyor for the property owner present, and I'm not sure, we may or may not have the property owner themselves.
Is the applicant prepared to make some comments regarding 67/69 Chestnut Street?
Yes, good evening. My name is Mike Bennett. I'm a surveyor for Bennett and Smiles Associates, Inc. And first of all, if you look in the title block, it does say 67 Chestnut Investments, LLC. And then in the line below that, it gives the street address as 69 Chestnut Street.
Thank you. I need new glasses.
We all do at this hour. Just per the request of the commission at the last meeting, we asked our soil scientists to come up with a planning plan with some recommendations. As you'll see on the drawing, he's created primarily a hedgerow of bushes consisting of a sweet pepper bush and a high bush blueberry. He was alternating the bushes and planting them along the edge of the wetland line. And then the soils that are between the wetland line and the silt fence, he's provided a description for a seed mixture to be planted in that area. And what he's suggesting is a New England erosion control restoration mix for detention bases and moist sites. So that will, once that's planted and it starts to germinate, it'll start to reestablish the wetland soil there. And then if you look on the east side of the silt fence, there's an area what brush was cut, but the ground surface was not disturbed. If you look at it, it's got a lot of leaf litter and branches on it. But there's also some unsuitable materials in there. I saw, there's parts of a lawnmower, there's some metal pipes and fence posts and stuff. What he's recommending with respect to the unsuitable materials is just to have it removed from those areas by hand and disposed of in the dumpster that they have on site. One other modification we made to the plan is if you look at the north end of the house, you see a line that goes down the slope, and it's got RD on it. That would be for a roof drain. Currently, it ends right off the corner of the house, and we didn't want to leave it daylight there because we were concerned about it eroding the steep bank there. So what we've done is we've extended it to the base of the hill, and we have a note on the plan that indicates that the roof drain outlet discharges into a trench 6 feet long by 2 feet wide by 1 foot deep with 1 inch washed stone encased in woven textile fabric, and then covered with 6 inch thickness of 1 inch washed stone. That will, let that water percolate into the soil in the surrounding area without creating any erosion. We thought it helpful to add that, and the soil scientists confirmed that it would be a justifiable option to get that there, and certainly help protect the wetlands and the lawn, what remains of the lawn in the rear of the yard. That's primarily what I have. I think we've complied with your request, but I'll be happy to answer any questions and address any other concerns you may have.
Yes, Commissioner Bassman. Jamie, have you been able to review this sufficiently to either concur with the recommendations or have issues with them?
Jamie Frederick, the wetland agent. I've looked at it briefly. I did see the stormwater, but it wasn't clear to stormwater management, but it wasn't clear to me that that was new proposed activity. The commission may want to consider whether or not that requires a permit for approval. In regards to the plantings are shown to be located just behind the wetland flags. It's just right behind the wetland edge. I think that the plantings that are provided are acceptable. I would maybe make the recommendation that the commission specify that a dwarf variety of the high bush blueberry should not be used. I don't know if it's necessary, but at the same time, I have seen dwarf blueberries implemented in plans where I don't think it was the intent.
Just what is the issue with the dwarf blueberry?
Jamie Frederick in the wetland, it doesn't get that large. So in this case, I think part of the intent of the plantings based on the spacing is to, aside from enhancing the habitat, is to also kind of demarc the limit of the wetland area. So just to help kind of fill it in and prevent any activity from expanding into the wetlands. I do have some pictures that were submitted by the property owner that I don't believe have been reviewed yet by the commission that I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention.
Commissioner Bassman, before you put those up on the screen, speak to me a little bit more about the first item that you raised, which was the stormwater management issue.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So I did not pick up on the fact that there was new proposed stormwater management to modify where the roof drainage is being directed. And I believe as part of the notice of violation, or sorry, cease and correct order, the original cease and correct order, that is not that, it had specified that any additional activities should be reviewed and permitted as needed. So the question would be whether or not the commission thinks it's a permit should be applied for that drainage modification. And if so, whether it should be reviewed by the full commission or agent approval.
Again, Mike Bennett, Bennett Smilis, may I just jump in there quickly? What we're talking about is a very minor disturbance. It's a 4-inch pipe that's really being extended to the bottom of the bank. And then there is a stone placed at the end of the pipe to prevent erosion. If you allow the roof drainage to just discharge onto the ground at the top of the bank with no protection, it's just going to continue to erode the bank as it goes down the hill because it's fairly steep there. Any disturbance to the soil and the bank would be very minimal. You're probably talking a trench that's about 18 inches wide to get the piping going down the hill and about 2 feet deep. I think by far this enhances anything that could be done by just letting the roof leaders discharge at the top of the bank. We use this type of trench quite frequently in designs for footing drain outlets and roof drain outlets, and it's just to prevent erosion during those storm periods where you have water running out fast. It just protects the soil where it's discharging from the pipe.
Commissioner Bassman here. Yeah, I don't have any issue, I guess, with the improvement. It's more this process of a permit as opposed to, and Jamie, this is a question for you, as opposed to being able to do this work under the auspices of the correction aspect of the cease and correct.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, that is correct. I certainly do agree that it would be an improvement to a situation that would be causing erosion. It's just a matter of the appropriate vehicle to approve such activity.
And good, I mean, is it a choice that we have of being able to do this under the cease and correct or a permit, or is it more restrictive than that?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I have not observed the condition, but I suppose if it is causing erosion, the commission could consider it a corrective action and essentially mandate that it occurs.
This Commissioner Bassman, as we look at the site here and see the topography, as well as the situation that Mr. Bennett talked about, it would seem to me if it isn't occurring now, it's clearly going to occur unless something is done in a corrective manner, such as what's being suggested. So I would prefer to, I think, be able to do this under the cease and correct order itself, as opposed to a whole nother permit, given timing and incorporation of that activity with the rest of the plan that's being done here under the cease and correct.
Again, Mike Bennett, Bennett Smilis Associates, part of the cease and correct order was to have us seed and stabilize this slope. And I think this just adds to the fact that we're kind of doing a little belt and suspenders activity here to stabilize the slope when we know that there's a condition that's going to occur in the future if we don't address it now and correct it with the other slope corrections.
Commissioner Granholz, I think it should be left as part of the correction, because if we try to go through a permitting process, that's going to be a couple of months before it ends up. And that way, they can't stabilize that slope or anything else. So why not let them just get the thing done as part of the correction?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, just a couple of clarifying questions. I'll ask them back to back for simplicity. One is, has the activity occurred yet? And if not, there's currently erosion control blanket in that area. How would the activity occur relative to the stabilization of that area and those erosion control blankets?
Okay, Mike Bennett and Smiles. Again, the activity has not occurred yet. And what they would do, a lot of that, almost all of that area is stabilized with grass. What they would do in the small strip of land that they're going to install the pipe in is they would cut the mat, and then install the pipe, and then replace the soil where they dug out the pipe. Again, this is a very small area, probably, with the soil they dig out of it, put it on the slope, and then put it back in. You're probably disturbing an area that's about 4 or 5 feet wide. Once it's restored, they would just reseed it and put new erosion control mat on the area that's disturbed. And again, this is an activity that is probably going to take place in half a day. It'll probably take them 4 hours or something of that nature to do that.
Commissioner Bassman, you had another question, Jamie?
I kind of asked them both as one question.
Okay. Given that answer and the other discussion with Commissioner Bernal's comment, any reason why we can't proceed whether the cease and correct order to get done?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, if that's how the commission wants to proceed, I think that you've explained your rationale for proceeding in such a manner. I just wanted to go through some of the pictures that were submitted by the property owner regarding past conditions in the commission's review of the proposed planting plan. The requirement was that they do a planting plan for the impacted wetland and upland areas. So this is a somewhat recent picture, and then this goes back in time. It shows the shed that was on the original survey, and I believe this looks like Japanese knotweed that had overgrown into what was probably at some point at least partially a lawn area. Another picture with the overgrowth that was removed. In this picture, you can see some of the cutting that had occurred. And then I just wanted to show you a couple of pictures of the aerial images and the street view as well. So this is the 2016 aerial image, and you can see that there was certainly at least lawn in between the shed and the house. And I believe the shed is the shed on the most recent site plan?
I don't believe so.
I believe the shed was located predominantly in the wetland area. And then this is the 2004 aerial image, and it looks like the lawn may have extended a little bit further north. So I just wanted to confirm that there's been at least some extent of lawn in the back. There was a fair amount of vegetation on the on the slope area that has been stabilized with the erosion control blanket. So So again, I just wanted to make the commission aware of that. I think I've got a street view somewhere. I'm not sure if I have the street view available.
I think we've got enough to conclude this.
So I think the Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I think the matters for consideration for the commission to address are whether or not the planting plan satisfies what the commission was looking for, and confirming whether or not the stormwater management modification is an acceptable part of the cease and correct as far as site stabilization. And I just also want to point out that the order required that the planting is stated, the plan shall include that inspections of the plantings be completed at the end upon completion of the planting towards the end of the first growing season and toward the end of the growing season for a period of at least 5 years from the initial plantings. And that reports must be submitted by a qualified ecologist or wetland scientist or duly authorized agent as approved by the agency, and must document an 85% or better survival rate of the plantings per section 710 of the town regulations. I don't believe that detail was provided on the plan, but if the commission is satisfied with the plan, I think that you could approve the plan with the condition that the monitoring reports be submitted for the upholding of the cease and correct order dated October 30th, 2020.
So, Commissioner Bassman, so Jamie, can you scroll down that letter to where we talk about the 5 year and the 85%? Okay. So that we're consistent, this is Commissioner Bassman, we're consistent with our monitoring requirements for this, and that's included, if it's not on the plan, on the cease and correct order regarding the stormwater management. I think the latest plan that indicates that stormwater management feature, what's the date of that plan? The one I'm looking at is March 3rd, and I don't believe that incorporates that on that.
Mike Bennett and Smilis Associates. The plan date is March 3rd, but the latest revision is number 3, and it's dated 11/3/20.
Okay.
It's in the lower right-hand corner of the plan.
Right. Okay.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, that is correct. That's the plan that we're looking at right now.
So I guess the cease and correct order that accomplishes based on a plan submitted November 3rd of 2020 that reflects a improvement to managing stormwater management, as well as the plan dated March 3rd, 2020, indicating the plantings would be acceptable as conditions that would satisfy cease and correct 2010-01.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, the commission might also want to clarify. It's my understanding that the cease and correct order would not be lifted until the monitoring requirements have been fully complied with.
And just for clarification, that means the cease and correct is in play for 5 years?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, that would be correct.
Okay. And that's our standard approach, I assume, when we have monitor.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, correct.
Any further discussion on this enforcement action? We need a formal vote on this, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, yes, the commission should make a motion on whether or not they're approving the provided plan and affirming regarding the mitigation.
Somebody want to try that motion?
All right, Commissioner Grenalch, I'll make a motion that regarding the enforcement of correction at 69 Chestnut Street, that the submitted plan is approved for as part of that correction, and also that the you can identify it better, the conditions that Jamie's memo, I don't have it on the screen, so I can't identify it. Or you can just tell me what the, okay, that the, is this your, okay, that your, and that the conditions set forth in your letter of October 30th, 2020 be included as part of such approval.
Commissioner Bassman, the only, okay, is there a second?
Commissioner Begeman, second.
All right, this is Commissioner Bassman. The only thing that I would modify that motion with Commissioner Grenalch is to identify that the mitigation plan date, I believe Mr. Bennett said, was November 3rd, 2020. And that we specifically articulate that in the motion.
I'll amend my motion to say that the plan dated March 3rd, 2020, as modified number 3 of by on the date of 11/03/20, be the plan that we're referring to in the motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We need a second. I guess you just approved. That's great. So
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, Clarice as the second should confirm whether she agrees to the amendment.
Begeman agrees with the amendment.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Commissioner Begeman.
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Grenalch.
Commissioner Grenalch, aye.
Commissioner Kraus.
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Sullivan, aye.
And Commissioner Basserman, aye. Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you very much.
All right, Jamie, the floor is yours.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. For the agent approvals, the first one, 20 BRIW 2010-01 Jeffrey Lane. That is a town project. A resident contacted the department concerned about some flooding issues related to the road, and the town engineering department assessed that the drainage needed to be repaired and some debris removed from the outlet. So I handled that administratively, as the work was all outside of a wetland and was somewhat time sensitive and minor in nature. IW number 200901 and IW 200902 are both from 99 Tots Hill Road and were brought to the commission and were approved based on discussion with the commission. Same with IW number 200806 and IW number 200807, 41 Brainerd Road, lots 3 and 4, which were listed under applications for review but got moved to agent approvals upon receipt of the outstanding materials. And then going on to correspondence and announcements, the annual report has been submitted to the town clerk and it's available in the Dropbox if anyone wants to take a look at it. Executive Order 9H, remote participation in municipal meetings, provides for the continuance of remote meetings and hybrid in-person and remote meetings. So that again speaks to the fact that if the commission wants to hold an in-person meeting staff will have to still maintain a remote meeting option for people. And that extends the remote meeting process, I believe, through February, early February. So gives us a bit of time with that process. And then C was added at the beginning of the evening, and that is Kakiwick is having a virtual conference on December 5th. If any commissioner is interested in attending, please let staff know as soon as possible and we'll register you. It's $30 a person. Again, it's December 5th, which is a Saturday. The town will pay for the registration. We just ask that if you register that you make sure you attend. And I don't know, Peter, if you want to say anything as to...
Thank you, Jamie. That is a virtual meeting designed to be from 9 to 1 o'clock. Usually it's an in-person meeting as kind of an all-day affair. It's on a Saturday because many of the people that attend have day jobs and find the Saturday helpful. It's going to be information regarding invasive species and how do we move forward managing wetlands and conservation activities under a environment of climate change. There's a keynote speaker, and this is our first attempt at a virtual meeting, but we may have lots of opportunities to do virtual meetings, unfortunately. So if you've got the time, hopefully it'll be worth your while.
Jamie, Frederick and the Wetland Agent, just to follow up, we'll send out the information regarding the program tomorrow via email. And if you have any questions or want to register, just let us know.
Yeah, it's also available on the Kakiwick website, which is caciwc.org. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Commissioner Greenwald.
And a second.
Commissioner Sullivan, I second it.
Usually that happens within a nanosecond of the first.
I don't think we need a roll call. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Good evening, everyone.
Bye.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.